Okay, so there's a movie coming, and personally, I think it looks fun. Also, we did do Mortal Kombat, and so I think it's just sort of time. Anyway, today we're going to talk about Street Fighter action figures, focusing mostly on the OG Hasbro line because they were the first, and I mean, they're kind of awesome. I mean, they're bad, but awesome. Jason Emmett here with Rewind Toys, and yes, today we're going to tell you how those Hasbro Street Fighters came to be. All right, so check this. It's 1991. Street Fighter II hits the arcade and becomes one of the most popular and best-selling arcade games of the year. Like, this game was massive. By 1994, it had been played by over 25 million people in just the United States. And, that's not counting countries like Japan, where it sort of originated. Street Fighter II has been called one of the most important and influential arcade games of all time, and rightly so, as it launched a genre and had everyone clamoring to make their own version. I mean, there were a bunch of rip-off versions. Weird as it is, because this was Street Fighter II, a lot of people didn't even know there was a Street Fighter 1. I did. I played it once at a store while waiting for my mom to get done shopping, but I digress. That one came out in 1987. Maybe we'll talk about that game at some point. But for today, you need to understand Street Fighter II was a huge thing, and in 1992 and 1993, at this point, G.I. Joe wasn't as big of a thing. So G.I. Joe had been a cash cow for Hasbro, but sales were beginning to decline. Seeing the popularity of the Street Fighter series, Hasbro, they get an idea. What if we make a line of figures based around those characters? Sounds like a good idea, right? So Hasbro had done a little shifting around by 1993, completely revamping the G.I. Joe designs. They decided that they would start putting all their main figures under a line called the Battle Cores line. This was a way to sort of reissue past figures without having to change much, aside from packaging. It would also allow them to branch out more. And those branches would include the Mega Marines, the Star Brigades, the Ninja Force, and yep, you guessed it, Street Fighter II. Hasbro approaches Capcom, and they tell them their idea, and Capcom, well, they know how successful Hasbro was with G.I. Joe, and also lines like Transformers, My Little Pony, you get it. And they see this. They're probably thinking, yeah, this sounds like a great idea, right? So in all fairness, both parties were correct. It really was a great idea, in theory. The problem was Hasbro, they didn't want to spend a lot of money, and so they did the same thing they would end up doing in the Mortal Kombat line, which we talked about, which actually came after the Street Fighter figures. Anyway, you can check out that video right there, and we talk about Mortal Kombat in that one. What they did is they slapped them together. They used existing molds and just threw together a line. For example, Chun-Li used a Scarlet mold, Ken used a Storm Shadow mold, and Blanca used a Road Pig mold. Yes, I know. Most of them had original head sculpts, and a few sort of worked, looking at you, Guile, but most of them just sort of looked like what they were, rehashed G.I. Joes with different heads. Funny enough, in our Mortal Kombat video, we pointed this same thing out, and I'll tell you now, a lot of the same molds were used for Street Fighter that would end up getting used for Mortal Kombat as well. Now, we did get a few all-original figures, E-Honda, Sagat, and Dalsum, and without a doubt, these were the best-looking of the bunch. Even if they're not your favorite Street Fighter characters, they're definitely the best-looking G.I. Joe Street Fighter. Hey, guys, do me a quick favor. Drop down there and karate chop that subscribe button and maybe punch that thumbs up while you're down there. It really helps us a ton. It kind of helps us in the algorithm because the YouTube algorithm is crazy. Anyway, it takes less than 30 seconds, and we would really appreciate it. Anyway, guys, now back to the show. All right, so the original line, we had Ryu, which was Ninja Force Slice, Ken Masters, which was Ninja Force Storm Shadow. We had Guile, who was a mix of different molds, Chun-Li, which was Ninja Force Scarlet, Blanca, which mostly used the 1988 Road Pig, M. Bison, a mix of different molds with a new head, Edmund Honda, which, like I said, was a brand new mold, so was Dalsum. We had Zangief, a mix of different G.I. Joe molds, Vega, which was Ninja Force Bonsai, and I will tell you, this one irritated me because where's this where's his claws, man? We need his claws. Balrog, which was the 1987 Big Boa, and Sagat, which again was an all original mold and looks amazing. So they all came with spring-loaded action gimmicks like punches and kicks. This was a feature that, even as a kid, I was never really personally a fan of. I always just wanted to pose them myself, and those things always just got to, like when you're trying to display them, the kick would kick up. I have a few of these now, and Chun-Li, for example, has a leg that kicks up, and she's hard to display because it'll just occasionally pop up. But that's just me. I was never a big fan of that stuff. We were also given 3 vehicles: the Beast Blaster with Champion Edition Blanca and Chun-Li, the Crimson Cruiser with Champion Edition M. Bison, and the Sonic Boom Tank with Champion Edition Guile. There was also the Dragon Fortress playset that came with Champion Edition Ryu and Ken. But Hasbro didn't stop there. No way. They released a smaller run of 12-inch figures, so a smaller, taller run, as it were. These were dolls, and they called them the Hall of Fame collection. These actually kind of looked like their game counterparts. So, if you were looking for them to look like them, this was what you wanted. They consisted of Ryu, Guile, Blanca, and Bison. And that was it. That's all they did. I'm just kidding. See, in 1994, we got the Street Fighter live-action movie. Maybe you've seen it. If so, I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry, because like the figures, the movie is a beautiful disaster. All camp and style, zero substance, but there's still something kind of magical about it now. Anyway, with the movie, they had to make more figures, and they did. And this was actually kind of a good thing. They gave us 9 characters that looked way closer to how they should have looked. They also gave us another 6 variations of Guile, a Guile Bison 2-pack. They were obsessed with Guile. They gave us a Guile Bison 2-pack, 4 vehicles, and the Shadow Lu headquarters playset. Honestly, all of these are really great figures. I highly recommend them. Over the years, much like Mortal Kombat, the Street Fighter action figure line has been taken on by various companies. Jada, Funko, NECA, Storm. I mean, there are a bunch, and everybody probably has their favorite characters. Some are pretty great, but do any of them actually manage to compare to the Hasbro run? For pure nostalgia reasons, I say nay. I say nay. No, they did not quite live up to that Hasbro line. I mean, again, the Hasbro line isn't great, but it is also kind of great. If you were there, you get it. You know what I mean. And like I said, I love these. I own a few currently. I would love to have the rest. I'm always on the hunt for them. Mostly loose. A box is going to cost you quite a bit. But if you were around in 1993, you probably kind of love these too. Anyway, let me know in the comments. Did you have these? Do you have these? What do you think of the Hasbro run of the Street Fighter II action figures? And what do you think is going to happen with the new movie coming out? Who do you think will run with new action figures? It was cool hanging out with you guys, as always, and I hope you come back next time. Until then, when it comes to these iconic, if not a bit flawed, action figures from our youth, remember, the hunt is still half the fun.